Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So today what we are going to do is a call to action. As you may have known by following my posts, I'm a little bummed out by what the FCC is trying to do to net neutrality, and it really is a dangerous thing what they are trying to do. And so I am calling on my US-based community of followers to make sure that the FCC knows your comments. And what we are going to do today is I'm just going to give you a couple of really brief resources today. And I'm not going to go into the whole argument anymore other than just to reiterate once again. What seems to be going on right now in the government level of regulation is this opposites term in government that whatever they say seems to be the opposite. They're saying that net neutrality is hurting innovation. No, net neutrality helps innovation, because if you remove net neutrality and allow an ISP like Time Warner or like Comcast or like Charter, if you allow these groups to dictate the speed of various things on the internet, then they can stifle their competitors. For example, if Comcast and Hulu they kind of have a working deal together. I don't think Netflix and anybody else does, but since Hulu and Netflix are direct competition and Comcast is in bed, so to say, with Hulu, then what is to prevent Comcast from slowing down the bandwidth to Netflix while Hulu gets a free pass? And this is the type of stuff that happens. In fact, we even see now under the current thing where some of these streaming services will count against your plan unless you're using their own self-stream services. So that's kind of a legal way for them to get around net neutrality. But what net neutrality says is that these companies may not in any way restrict bandwidth on any particular service, as long as it's, of course, lawful content. And that's what we are battling to keep. We want to keep that as the reality, because if we allow them to take that freedom away from us, in other words, if Comcast can now, if they're free to self-regulate, and of course, where's all this self-regulation going? The terms and conditions, which if you have ever read terms and conditions, which I encourage you to read terms and conditions for anything that has them attached, you will see that under terms and conditions, one of the first things you will find under those terms and conditions is that the company has a right to change them at any time. So while they're all jumping on right now and putting in their terms and conditions, we will not do this, we will voluntarily not restrict any bandwidth, yeah, that's just going to happen until the net neutrality laws are dead and buried in the ground. And then they're going to change the terms and conditions, because they do it all the time. You're just not necessarily aware of it. And what we want to do here is we want to make sure that net neutrality remains the law. Now, this is not something like, if you look at one of the things Ajit Pai says right now, it's like, we thrived, the internet thrived without this net neutrality for years. Well, there's a reason, and that's because there was a global restriction that no ISP under any circumstance could ever restrict bandwidth of any form or another. It was a international thing. But those exceptions expired. And I do not remember the exact year they expired, but it was like 2010 or 2012. That is what started this entire mix of net neutrality. And then there was this big thing in 2013. But of course, in our current culture, we don't go back that far. We are so in the moment. And a lot of it's because the social media does it to us. All right. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're texting. Do you realize this? When you used to send a letter through the mail, it would take a long time to get to you. And I engaged in pen pal programs with people where you would expect maybe a letter every few weeks. You get a letter, you send it out, you read the letter, you respond, you send another letter out. It's a closer, more intimate thing. Now, with email comes around, we got used to communicating faster. And now, have you ever noticed if you send a text to somebody and you don't get an immediate reply, you feel neurotic? Well, social media does the same thing to you. Facebook itself has a life of only like half of a day. Okay, so what that means is that if you don't check Facebook multiple times throughout the day, you miss out on quote unquote important things. But what ends up happening is that you get this addiction to it. And then you get things like Twitter. Well, that has like a life of an hour. If you're not constantly checking Twitter or Instagram or some of these other ones on that much of a regular basis, then what ends up happening is that you'll perceive missing out on things. And so what has happened is our communication has shifted so fast, we can't remember something a week ago, let alone a month ago, a year ago, or 3 to 5 years ago. And that's when this net neutrality stuff started. Well, all of that started because a huge international regulation expired. That's what happened. That started the conversations, and originally they were going to go with a plan that Ajit Pai is trying to put in right now, but they got so many comments that Wheeler actually listened to those comments and said, okay, it is important that we protect the net and we establish net neutrality. And then we got the Title II classification because they were sued by Verizon. Guess who's from that? Ajit Pai. They were sued by Verizon. And then the court came down and said the only way that this is legal is if the internet is regulated as a Title II telecommunications, which is a Telecommunication Act. So the difference is a Title I versus a Title II is that the Title I and I don't remember all of the ins and outs of this, but what I can tell you, I totally forgot about that, and I forgot to research it. But the Title II basically says it's kind of like the telephone companies, the utilities, and all these other things. The common carrier law basically says that all of the infrastructure can be used by anybody on that infrastructure, and the use of that infrastructure cannot be regulated. And that's kind of what the challenge happens to be. And so with the Title II classification, it allows the people to, or the FCC to regulate the internet and say you may not restrict certain contents. But the problem is that the ISPs have a major financial incentive to regulate some things more than they regulate other things. And this is the challenge with these regulations. All right. So with that being said, what they're trying to do is reverse the Title II classification and reverse net neutrality. And they're trying to say, well, we're going to let the companies police themselves. And they're all coming out and saying, oh, we're going to police ourselves just fine. No, they're not going to police themselves just fine. They're going to police themselves just fine until about somewhere between a week and a month after the net neutrality has completely died and there's a nail in the coffin and it's buried 6 feet deep and the Senate law comes out and all this other stuff. Then they're going to bury it deep, and then all of a sudden all those terms and conditions are going to change. And if you're on Comcast, good luck running Netflix, because they have a financial vested interest in Hulu succeeding. And if Netflix is off the table, now Hulu is one of your only options. But the problem is that this happens with all sorts of things. You want to talk about stifling innovation? What if I cannot get my new online service off the ground because the ISP for 50% of the country blocks it? That is stifling innovation. But removing net neutrality allows that stuff to be stifled. The current law prevents any ISP from stifling my new online internet product. We'll talk about decline of innovation. We are going to see absolute death of innovation if this happens, because the only people who will have any access is the ISPs, and the ISPs have a huge monopoly over all of this stuff. That is what we are fighting for today. And so with that, I want to let everybody know that I submitted my comments to the FCC today, and I signed Mozilla's newsletter for that. And if I see any other way that I can do this, what I have not yet done that I am planning to do very soon is I will be contacting senators and congressmen and all these other people and let them know that we need to leave net neutrality where it is. Okay. But what I wanted to do here is I wanted to give you the individual resources here so that you can very quickly come up here and find all these. So A couple websites. This first one here, if you go to the FCC's website, you can go ahead and do this. Now, it takes forever to find this thing. So John Oliver was very nice, his group. Now, check out what John Oliver said about this. And I am not a huge fan of John Oliver's things. I think he uses more vulgarity than I like. I'm not a huge fan of comedy. I'm not a huge fan of that type of comedy. But every once in a while, I listen to something he says and I go, I can kind of stand behind that, what he's saying. So that was a very good presentation that he just had on the net neutrality issue. And what he did is he registered a domain called GoFCCYourself. .com. So if you go there, it will point you exactly where you need to go. It points you to this page here. And then once you land on this page, and I'll see if I can put a link in here in the comments. So then what you do is you want to come down here. You can do a new filing. I just did the express filing here. You just give in, it automatically fills in the proceeding number, which is the, Save the Internet Act, whatever. You need to enter in the names, primary contact. Actually, the email is not required. It does require the address, city, state. Of course, even for me as a privacy advocate, I'm going to fill this stuff in because this is important enough for me to do that. And then I left some comments. You can check this box down here if you'd like an email confirmation. And I'm going to leave it at this page here so I can remember to throw that in the comments. So you can go right here, or you can go the John Oliver route and go to GoFCCYourself.com. The other thing is this one here, and this is thanks to Serge. A shout out to Serge who sent this to me in the comments. This is the Mozilla FCC newsletter. So FCC basically just goes through this. There's a blog post about it. You can read it. But you can sign the petition over here to jump in with Mozilla, and then they're going to take some things. Now, remember, what started this whole thing this time around was one of these types of petitions set up, of course, by the ISPs. And so we need to keep that in mind. So what we're going to do here is I came down here. I entered my name, email over here, basically signing the petition. And if you want to go another route, this one's one of them that I did not do, but it looks essentially the same as filing the proceedings. I'll need to look into a little bit more, but this is from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and basically this is a form letter that when you enter the information, it will automatically send this out. And I need to check this because some of these form letters will go to your senators and congressmen. Some of these letters will go straight to the FCC. If I can find one of these that goes right to directly to the senators and to the congresspersons, let me know, and I will definitely include those in, leave them in the comments for other people. If those get blocked by the comment spam and they seem legit, I will absolutely approve them. So I'm not all that concerned about that. But I am very avidly looking into all of these types of things because this is critically important that we do. And then the last thing is on my Patreon page, and I made this if you have not been to my Patreon page, I basically created it for all three of the channels I eventually will have. A little brief update on the cooking channel. I'm having some issues with the laptop being able to record things, so I have to figure out a better way to do the recording studio. But I left this as a publicly available post. It's not one that you have to be a patron to view, but I give you access to all of these individual links, and I also included in here what I actually wrote in my comments. So you can actually check out my Patreon page there to see that information. Of course, there's some other things on here that are patron-only ones. And then, I have some other stuff coming up there. But anyway, if you do want to help support the channel, the Patreon page is a good way to do that. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you can see what I saw and have all of these links available to you over there. And I will also put them down in the comments below. So this was a very quick video, but I just wanted to encourage everybody. If you are a US-based person, and you're watching this, I absolutely encourage you. It's not enough for us to complain and whine about what the FCC is going to do. We need to take some action. And this is your call to take some actions. Go there today. Fill out the comments. Let them know to keep net neutrality. And Despite he's already said he doesn't care what the comments are. Oh, you can leave all the comments you want. I'm going to do what I want to do. At least we will know and have a warning that you guys vote this in. We're going to all vote you out. And that's what we need to do. So this is just a call to action on net neutrality. Vote these people out. Tell them what we think and let them know that what they are going to do stifles innovation. Net neutrality does not stifle innovation. What they are doing stifles innovation. And we have to make sure that we take a stand and let them know. This has been Tom, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.